Hold on to your seats, because what you're about to hear is straight out of a movie script, except it all went down in real life. The courtroom hallway buzzed with subdued tension that morning, but 16-year-old Emory Davis tried to stay grounded. He wasn't new to the feeling, the stares, the whispers, the invisible question marks trailing him wherever he went. But today, he wasn't here to make a statement. Just clear his name over what his public defender called a minor incident. A locker damaged in a scuffle he didn't start, a teacher too quick to judge. Still, Emory came dressed like he mattered. Pressed collar shirt, clean jeans, and around his neck, a slender, weathered silver chain. Not flashy. Not new. But sacred. It had belonged to his father, Marcus Davis, a paramedic who died saving a family from a collapsed freeway tunnel 5 years prior. The chain was one of the only items recovered from the wreckage, burned and bent. Later repaired by Emory's grandfather, Reuben, and passed to him as a symbol of strength. Emory didn't wear it for attention. He wore it to remember. To carry a legacy into a place where boys like him were too often reduced to case numbers and assumptions. His grandfather, Reuben Ellis, walked beside him with a firm hand on a carved cane, eyes sharp beneath a time-worn hat. A Korean War vet and retired mechanic, Reuben was a man of quiet storms, didn't speak unless it mattered. As they stepped into the sterile light of the courthouse, he offered Emory a single phrase, "Keep your head high. We stand, not beg." They didn't need more words. As Emory waited on a cold bench outside courtroom 3A, he thumbed the edge of the chain beneath his collar, unaware that the next hour would shake the room, the system, and his place in it. The silence in the corridor felt heavier now. Emory sat upright on the wooden bench, his fingers brushing the pendant beneath his shirt as if grounding himself with each breath. Reuben remained still beside him, but his eyes tracked every uniformed figure moving through the hall. He didn't like courthouses. Not because of what they looked like, but because of what they remembered. Then he appeared, Deputy Grant Bishop. Tall, broad, with thinning hair and a jaw like he'd been chewing gravel since birth. The kind of man who carried his badge like a crown. Bishop's boots clicked sharply across the tile as he approached. He stopped. Looked Emory over from head to toe. His eyes paused at the glint of the chain. "You waiting on something?" Bishop asked, his voice all gravel and challenge. Emory didn't flinch. "My hearing." "What's the charge?" Bishop pressed. "Misunderstanding," Emory answered, steady. Bishop's eyes narrowed. "That so?" He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking onto the chain. "Bold choice, wearing something like that in here." "What is that, silver?" Emory didn't answer. "Looks expensive," Bishop muttered. "You steal that?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Reuben's grip on his cane tightened. "It was my father's," Emory said evenly. Bishop smirked. "Yeah. That right?" Before Emory could respond, the bailiff opened the courtroom door, calling out, "Emory Davis." Emory rose. Reuben gave a curt nod, silent support as always. But then it happened, too fast for anyone to stop. Bishop stepped forward and, without warning, grabbed the chain. "What did I tell you?" he growled. With a sharp tug, he ripped it from Emory's neck. The snap echoed through the hallway like a slap. Gasps followed. Even the bailiff flinched. "That ain't yours," Bishop muttered, holding it up like evidence in a trophy case. Emory froze, stunned. His hand rose instinctively to the tender red mark on his neck. "That's mine," he said, low. "It's my dad's." "Sure it is," Bishop muttered, pocketing it like loose change. Reuben's voice cracked through the tension. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Just doing my job," Bishop said smoothly, walking toward the courtroom. The chain stayed in his pocket. Inside, Emory sat quietly at the defense table, his neck still stinging. His young attorney leaned over. "Everything okay?" He nodded, but nothing was okay. His chain was gone. His breath was shallow. His grandfather looked ready to swing that cane like a war relic. And then, she entered. Judge Celeste Davis. Emery's mother. She walked with calm, measured authority, her robe flowing like quiet thunder. Most people didn't know she was his mother. Today, she didn't make it known. But Emery caught the flicker in her eyes as she scanned the room, stopping just a moment too long on Bishop. She sat. Court was called to order. The gallery hushed. The prosecutor began droning through the formalities when Bishop stepped forward, uninvited, chain still clutched in his hand. "Just for the record, Your Honor," he said, voice firm, "this individual was in possession of what appears to be stolen property. I confiscated it as potential evidence." The chain gleamed under the lights, suspended between two fingers like some cheap pendant. The room shifted. Reuben sat straighter. Celeste looked up slowly from her notes. "Confiscated?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "No proof of ownership?" "He claimed it was his father's." "Did he pose a threat to you?" "No, ma'am." "Was he under arrest?" "No." "Did you file a seizure report?" "I was about to." She set down her pen. "Deputy Bishop, let me be clear. You took property off a minor in a federal courtroom hallway without cause, without warrant, and without protocol. Is that correct?" Bishop opened his mouth, then closed it again. The courtroom went still. Judge Davis leaned forward. "And the boy you humiliated," she said, her voice calm but full of fire, "is my son." Gasps rippled across the gallery. Bishop went pale. Emery's jaw clenched, but inside, something shifted. It wasn't over, not even close, but the power had changed hands. The silence in the courtroom was no longer a silence of fear. It was the breath before the reckoning. Deputy Grant Bishop stood frozen, the chain still dangling between his fingers like it had the power to undo him, and now, maybe it did. His mouth twitched, but no sound came out. In the silence that followed Judge Celeste Davis's words, every pair of eyes in the room turned toward him, not with respect, but recognition, the kind that stung. Emery didn't move. He sat stiff-backed, breath shallow, but his eyes never left his mother. For the first time in his life, he saw her not just as the mother who made oatmeal and ironed his shirt for this very morning, but as a force. A reckoning. Judge Davis's voice sliced through the silence. "Return it." Bishop hesitated. Her eyes narrowed. "Now." The deputy stepped forward, shoulders squared in defiance, but his movements told another story. He placed the chain on the defense table with a metallic clink that echoed across the courtroom like a dropped sword. For a moment, no one moved. Emery's attorney slid it gently toward him. He stared at it, the simple, battered chain that had survived a fire, a father's death, and now a courtroom humiliation, and slowly lifted it back around his neck. This time, it felt heavier. Not with shame, but with memory, with dignity, with weight earned. Judge Davis didn't break eye contact with Bishop. "This courtroom," she said, her voice steady, "is not your playground. It is not your stage. And it will not be the place where you humiliate young men of color under the guise of authority." Bishop's jaw tightened. "Your Honor," with all due respect, she raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "You didn't know he was my son. But you knew what he looked like. And that was enough for you." He flinched. "Let me make something very clear. You laid hands on a minor. You took personal property without probable cause, without warrant, without arrest. In front of a federal courtroom. In front of this bench." Her gaze swept the gallery. "In front of witnesses." The air in the room thickened. Even the prosecutor avoided eye contact, suddenly deeply interested in the file in front of him. "I watched it," she continued. "From the moment you entered the hallway, I was there. I saw you approach him with suspicion. I saw you size him up. I saw you take something that did not belong to you. Not because it was a threat. Not because you had reason. But because you thought no one would stop you. Bishop's face had drained of color, but he stayed quiet. The only difference between today and the countless other times you've acted with impunity is that today, someone was watching. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Reuben didn't speak, but his eyes, sharp as steel, locked on Bishop with decades worth of meaning behind them. Celeste rose slowly from the bench. She didn't slam a gavel. She didn't shout. She simply stood, letting the weight of the moment land where it needed to. I will be filing a formal complaint with the sheriff's department. You are hereby barred from participating in any further proceedings in this courtroom pending a full internal investigation. She paused. And believe me, Deputy Bishop, this time, it will not disappear under a rug. The bailiff stepped forward. Please escort Deputy Bishop to the lobby. His presence here is no longer required or appropriate. Bishop opened his mouth again, but this time, even the bailiff didn't wait. A firm hand guided him away. As he walked, the smirk that had defined his authority for so long had vanished, replaced with something Emery hadn't expected to see, uncertainty. And fear. As the courtroom doors closed behind him, the energy shifted again. The silence that remained wasn't hollow. It was full. Full of something rising. Judge Davis took a breath and returned to the bench. Let the record reflect, she said, that the item in question has been returned to its rightful owner. That no warrant was obtained. That no arrest was made. And that the officer in question acted outside his authority. The court reporter's fingers clicked with speed now, as if even the typewriter wanted justice on record. She glanced at Emery then. Just a second. Just enough. The kind of look a mother gives her child when words aren't enough. When pride and grief and fury all live behind the same steady gaze. Then she looked away. I am recusing myself from any further rulings on this case to avoid conflict of interest. The matter will be reassigned. Emery blinked, confused. But, she added, voice still clear, I will not recuse myself from what happened in this courtroom. That is not a matter of family. That is a matter of law. The distinction landed hard. This wasn't a mother defending her son. This was a judge calling out injustice. Publicly. For too long, she said, men like Bishop have acted as judge, jury, and humiliation dealer. Not today. Not here. Somewhere in the back, someone clapped once. It didn't spread. But it didn't need to. She turned her attention to the gallery. Let this be a reminder that authority does not make you untouchable. That power without principle is not justice, it is oppression. She returned to her seat. The charges against Emery Davis are dismissed with prejudice. The words were clean, cold, final. Emery didn't know what to feel. Relief? Rage? He looked at his mother one last time before stepping out of the courtroom. Her eyes were already back on her docket. Like it was just another case. But it wasn't. Everyone in that room knew something had cracked open. Outside, the sky had cleared. The courthouse behind him stood as still as ever. But inside Emery, something else stirred. A realization, he hadn't just been defended. He'd been seen. And the world, whether it liked it or not, had been forced to look. The courtroom doors closed behind Emery Davis with a gentle thud, but it echoed in his chest like a gunshot. The chain rested once again against his skin, warmed by body heat and something deeper, the strange fire of having stood, unshaken, when everything around him tried to reduce him to silence. He stepped out into the hallway where the fluorescent lights flickered, not quite ready to return to the outside world. His grandfather Reuben joined him quietly, matching his pace. They didn't speak at first. They never needed many words. But today felt different. You good? Reuben finally asked, his voice low and steady. Emery nodded, then paused. I don't know. They stopped by a bench. Emery sank down first. Reuben followed, the weight of years settling beside him. I thought I'd feel something else, Emery admitted. Like winning. But it doesn't feel like that. Reuben looked at him, then down the hallway where a deputy walked by without a glance their way. Justice ain't always clean, he said. Sometimes it don't feel like justice at all. Sometimes it just feels like survival. Emery looked down at the chain in his hand, fingers tracing the fire-scarred edges. He ripped it off like it was nothing. Like it didn't mean anything. But it did, Reuben said. To you. And now, to everyone who saw it. At that moment, a young man, maybe 20, rounded the corner and stopped short when he saw Emery. His eyes widened. You're the kid from the video, he said breathlessly. The chain, the judge, that was your mom. Emery blinked. He hadn't expected recognition, not already. The kid stepped closer, his voice softer now. Just wanted to say thank you. What you did, staying calm like that. It mattered. Emery offered a small nod, unsure what to say. People are watching, the kid added. They're seeing this. Finally. As he walked away, Emery sat in stunned silence. That, Reuben said, tapping his cane softly against the floor, that's the shift. When the world starts looking back. By the time they got home, the air outside had grown thicker. Not with weather, with weight. The neighborhood looked the same, trimmed hedges, concrete steps, barking dogs behind fences. But Emery felt eyes. Eyes behind blinds. Eyes from porches. His phone buzzed non-stop. He didn't even want to look. Inside, his mom wasn't home yet. But her robe was draped over the living room chair, and the smell of coffee lingered faintly in the kitchen. He sat at the table, the chain still hanging, still hot. His fingers hovered over the metal once more. He remembered being a kid, gripping it tighter whenever he missed his dad. Now he gripped it again, but not from grief. From purpose. Reuben leaned in the doorway, watching quietly. You know, your daddy once told me, you don't measure a man by what he says in a fight. You measure him by what he don't say when he could. Emery smiled faintly. I think I finally get that. Just then, the front door opened. Celeste Davis walked in, still in heels, eyes tired but clear. She dropped her keys in the bowl and looked at her son. For a long second, they just stared at each other. Then she walked over and touched his shoulder. You didn't lose today, she said, echoing her courtroom words. I know, Emery replied quietly. But it still hurt. She sat down across from him. It always does. That's the part they don't prepare you for. He studied her face, the lines around her eyes, the poise in her jaw. For the first time, he realized how much she carried. Every day. For him. For others. They're opening an investigation into him, she said. Internal affairs. And I'm testifying. Emery's brow lifted. You are. She nodded. On record. Not as your mother. As a witness. As a judge. As someone who's watched too many men like him get away with too much for too long. The gravity of it hit him slowly. Will it matter? She hesitated. It might. Or it might just be another file in a drawer. But I won't let them pretend it didn't happen. He sat up straighter. I want to speak, too. She studied him for a second, then nodded slowly. We'll make that happen. The next morning, Emery woke up to headlines. His face wasn't on them, just blurry security footage, courtroom stills, quotes. But his story was. Judge confronts deputy over racial profiling incident. Teen's chain ripped off in courtroom sparks national outcry. He didn't know the judge was his mother. The internet did what it always did. People picked sides. Some applauded. Some dismissed. Some said it wasn't about race. Others wrote think pieces proving it was. He didn't read them all. Instead, he went for a walk. At the bus stop, a little girl waved at him. Outside the barber shop, two men gave him a nod. Inside the community center, a poster had gone up, "Know your rights," with a quote underneath, "Sometimes, standing still is louder than shouting." It was attributed to Emory Davis. He froze. He hadn't said those words exactly. But he understood them. By noon, 3 more complaints against Grant Bishop had surfaced. Old cases. Buried ones. Emory didn't know their names, but now their voices were joining his. That night, they sat down for dinner again. Just the 3 of them. No press. No tweets. No chains being ripped off. Just a table, plates, and quiet. Celeste served the last of the cornbread. Reuben passed the sweet tea. And Emory, for once, didn't feel like the boy in the courtroom. He just felt like himself. Still changed. Still watching. But not afraid. Because now, the world was watching too. Days passed, but the echo of that moment in the courtroom didn't fade. At school, Emory Davis walked the halls under a different kind of silence. Before, he was the quiet kid, the one who kept to himself, wore the same chain every day, and never made waves. Now, people whispered. Not just about what had happened, but about him. Some offered nods. A few even thanked him in passing. But many, too many, just stared, unsure of what to say, or if they should say anything at all. In government class, his teacher cleared his throat before starting the lecture. Today, he said awkwardly, we'll be discussing due process, and current events. He never mentioned Emory by name. He didn't have to. The discussion was stiff, guarded. A few students muttered about cops doing their jobs. Others stayed quiet. Emory just kept his eyes on his notebook, his fingers occasionally brushing against the chain that once again lay flat against his chest. His body was in class. But his mind was still in that courtroom, still hearing the sharp clink of metal as it dropped on the defense table. That sound had branded itself into him. That sound changed everything. That night, at the Davis house, Celeste came home later than usual. She walked through the door with her hair slightly out of place, her heels kicked off before she even crossed the threshold. Emory was sitting at the kitchen table, textbooks open, though he hadn't turned a page in over an hour. They're escalating the review, she said, setting down her bag. Grant Bishop is now officially under full internal investigation. 3 prior complaints have resurfaced. One from 5 years ago never made it to paper, until now. Emory looked up slowly. Because of me? Because of what he did, she corrected. You just made it impossible to ignore. He nodded slowly. Will they fire him? Celeste leaned against the counter. They might. His badge is suspended for now. But this process takes time. Layers. Interviews. Reports. And meanwhile, he asked, not accusing, just asking. Meanwhile, the world watches, she replied. He thought about that. All those phones in the courtroom. All the headlines. All the voices, louder now, refusing to go silent again. I just didn't think any of it would matter, he admitted. I thought I'd go in, get through it, go home. But you didn't just go through it, she said. You stood in it. And you were seen. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, he looked at me like I was nothing. She crossed the room and knelt beside his chair. And yet, you stood like you were everything. A soft knock on the front door interrupted them. Reuben answered. Outside stood a woman Emery didn't recognize. Mid-30s, wearing a navy blazer and jeans. She introduced herself as a reporter from a national media outlet. Her voice was gentle, professional. I just wanted to ask if Emery might be willing to speak. Not for a soundbite. Not for a viral clip. But for something deeper. About what it meant. About the chain. About the silence. Celeste looked to Emery. He paused, then shook his head. Not yet, he said quietly. Maybe later. The reporter nodded, understanding. If you change your mind, here's my card. She left without pushing. And for that, Emery was grateful. Later, he lay in bed, the chain tucked beneath his shirt. He stared at the ceiling, playing the hallway scene over in his mind again and again. The suddenness of it. The powerlessness. The way nobody stopped Bishop. Except, in the end, someone did. His mother. And now, maybe the system was starting to respond. Not fast. Not clean. But still, respond. The next day, Reuben returned from the barbershop with a glint in his eye. They're talking, he said. All up and down the block. About you. About what your mom said. About how that man was taken down right in front of the flag and the seal and all the folks who usually look the other way. Emery smiled faintly. Feels weird. Being the story. Reuben chuckled. You didn't pick the story, son. But you showed up when it picked you. Later that afternoon, Celeste pulled Emery aside. The Department of Justice just called, she said. They're reviewing the footage now, not just for misconduct, for civil rights violations. Emery's stomach tightened. So it's real now. It was always real, she said. But now it's official. He sat on the porch that evening, headphones in, phone muted. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the concrete. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since that day, he allowed himself to breathe deeply. At school the next week, the principal asked Emery to speak at the end-of-year assembly. About courage, he said, if you're comfortable. Emery hesitated. Then nodded. When the day came, he stood at the mic in the gym, the same gym where months ago someone had accused him of cheating on a test without evidence, just because he sat too quietly, moved too confidently. Now, all eyes were on him again. But this time, he didn't shrink. I didn't go to court to make a statement, he began. I just went to stand up for myself. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just didn't disappear. The students were silent. And sometimes, that's enough to change something. He looked out over the crowd. Faces stared back, curious, wide-eyed, some unsure. But he saw something else, too. He saw a few who sat up a little straighter. Maybe next time, it wouldn't be just him standing. Back home, Celeste sat at the dining table going over papers for the DOJ complaint. Reuben sipped coffee quietly. Emery leaned on the kitchen counter, chain around his neck, his posture relaxed but solid. They fired him, Celeste finally said. Bishop's done. Emery didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He just nodded. Because that wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. Something they would build, together. In life, moments of true strength often arrive not with noise, but with silence. This story reminds us that dignity is not measured by how loud we speak, but by how firmly we stand, especially when others try to strip us of our worth. Whether you are a young person trying to find your place in a world that sees you as less, or an elder who's carried generations of pain and hope, you know this truth: injustice hides in everyday places. And so does courage. It's in the quiet refusal to be humiliated, in the calm assertion that we matter. It's in the parent who watches with pride and pain as their child faces down what they were once forced to endure in silence. It's in the community that no longer looks away. This is not just a courtroom drama, it is a mirror held up to a world that too often rewards power over principle. But when truth is spoken, even softly, it echoes. And when we dare to stand up, even with trembling hands, we give others permission to do the same. The chain in this story may be small, but what it represents is enormous: memory, identity, love, and legacy. Let it remind us all that what we carry inside is more powerful than what anyone tries to take. So if this story touched you, if it stirred something real in your heart, don't let it fade. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss the stories that matter. And in the comments, tell me, where are you watching from, and what part of this story stayed with you most?